So, without further ado, I'd like to introduce our speakers. We have Jerry Reed, who is a design systems and accessibility consultant. And then we have PJ Onori, a design system leader and maker, who also has a podcast, Design System Office Hours, which, if you haven't heard it, it's really awesome. And then I'm your host, Michelle. I'm a design advocate at Zero Height. I co host a lot of podcasts because that's what, I don't know, they're very addicting to do. But let's get started. Let's jump into the first question. Also, halfway in, we will be taking questions from the audience. So if you have questions, feel free to put them in the chat, and we'll flag them and we'll see if we can answer them. All right. So first question. Well, first, I guess give a little intro about yourself and your design system experience, and kind of a fun fact about yourself as well.
Great. Shall I go first?
Yeah.
So I'm Jerry. I've worked as a design lead on various design systems, including Lloyds Bank and News UK. I am a massive documentation nerd. I love writing technical docs and specs. So, I get so much out of the How We Document report each year. So it is a real honor to be asked to speak about it. Fun fact. I run 3 times a week, around 8K a week. And if you add up the distance I've run over the past 20 years, I've worked out it's 0.6 of a way around the equator. So it's now become my life's fitness goal to do one full circle of the world.
Wow, that's impressive.
It's
PJ?
not very impressive. If you saw me run, you wouldn't be impressed. World's slowest runner, probably too.
I can assure you, you're not the world's slowest runner.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm PJ. I've been working on design systems since about 2011. I've worked on systems for GE, Disney, Pinterest, PayPal for a hot minute. Fun fact for me, I have not run 0.6 of the equator or 0.006 of the equator. And yeah, I'm really excited to be here though. It'll be a fun chat.
Awesome. Yeah, I have not run that far either. I I had a friend who tried to bike across the US and started in Pennsylvania and did not get very far outside of Philadelphia. Starting at the wrong state. You have to start with a smaller state. All right, so let's get to the, the actual content of this webinar. When I talk about just job titles with design systems. So as people who've led design system teams, how important do you think it is to have design system in a job title? Jerry, would you like to go first?
Yeah, I think having design systems in a title is certainly important for designers. You need a different skill set as a designer within a systems team compared to a regular flavored UI, UX, or product designer. In a systems team, you need a solid understanding of front end code and how the ripple effects of your changes will scale. So I think it's important for designers. Perhaps a systems title is less important for engineers and product people in a systems team. Their roles are perhaps less niche in systems. What do you think about systems titles, PJ? As someone who's made the jump from designer to a design system manager.
Yeah, if I'm hiring like a lead, yeah, sure, probably pretty important. It gets pretty risky if you're hiring someone that's going to head up the whole initiative from an IC perspective. Um, if I'm hiring someone more junior, I don't think it's necessary at all. In fact, there's someone in the chat who didn't have any design systems experience, and she nailed it. And so typically when when we're looking for someone more on the junior end or just starting their career, that is I'm not looking for that at all. I'm more interested in just, how do you think? How do you solve problems? You'll figure out all the gobbledygook of design systems stuff down the road, but can you think through problems? That's typically what I'm going through. One other caveat or way to think through it: internal knowledge of how a product works is super valuable. If there's someone within the company that knows the product and understands how everything connects and doesn't have design systems experience, that's still going to carry a lot of weight compared to someone new who may not necessarily understand how the company, well, probably doesn't because they haven't worked there, and may not necessarily be able to apply those past skills and experience to the company. If you have someone that knows how to do it but hasn't worked within the design system, I'd still weight that pretty heavily against someone from the outside.
Yeah, for sure. Those are really excellent points. I wanted to move to a chart from the report. So, from this chart, we asked, what changes people had in their in last year, and so 56% of people didn't experience any change, which means that 44% did. Wanted to So that can be ranging from layoffs to getting a new job to switching roles or what have you. Wanted to see if any of this surprised you, and what your thoughts are about like the stability of design systems in organizations. Jerry, did you have any thoughts?
Yeah, it's been a really volatile time. I feel like I would be expecting more change just based on the kind of chatter that goes through social media and stuff. But maybe that's about right. I mean, I tend to use sort of Twitter and the design system Slack as sort of a barometer for market trends. And yeah, obviously the market for systems roles has been so volatile. We were just talking about this before we came on. Often systems teams are the first to go in budget cuts because they're expensive and they don't directly impact revenue, which is just so short termist because obviously, design systems are slow burn in terms of investment. But if the systems run sensibly with the support of senior stakeholders, it should eventually save time and money. But unfortunately, when they're cutting jobs, it's often the first thing to go. I feel like, at least in London, the market has picked up slightly the side of Christmas. I feel like I've seen more jobs advertised and fewer mass layoffs like we had in 2023. What are your thoughts on that, PJ?
I I think it's funny because, if a systems team is working, they're doing the work, and typically that's going to lead to efficiency within the company. So you're laying people off, meaning you have less people to do the same amount of, it's not like they're asking people to do less work when they have less people. So you're laying off the team, which is going to enable the company to do more with less. To me, it just don't make no sense. Um, so I was hoping that systems would make it through this because they're efficiency drivers, and when you lay people off, you need more efficiency. But I don't have a strong read as to how systems have survived as opposed to the rest of the industry. It's just hard for me to tell. Um, I do think I hope that systems come out of this with a little bit more credibility because everyone's looking for how to do more with less, and that is definitely something that the systems do.
Yeah, for sure. And I think it seems like it really depends on the company and their understanding of design and design systems. So, um, you know, some companies are quick to make remove the design system team or reshuffle the people around, but some people double down on investment. So it really varies. I think, you know, it's just a matter of finding a company that can really understand and appreciate. But they are out there. Um, so
It's
I want to talk a
certainly
little.
it can.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry to interrupt. No,
No.
it just comes from the top always. If your senior stakeholders understand the value, then the system will be a success. If you don't have that, then it's always going to be an uphill battle.
Yes, yes, for sure. Um, I wanted to talk a little bit about people's professional experience and design system experience. So, from our report, we found out that more seasoned professionals tend to work on design systems, but they might not have like several years of design system experience. So, um, my first question to you all is, what are the benefits of having more experienced professionals working on a design system? I don't know, PJ, if you have any thoughts.
I think design systems are tough at baseline. I think everyone in here that's working on design systems knows that. Super complicated problems. You're not typically getting the same level of visibility, which I think is really hard for junior designers just getting started. Validation goes a long way. And that's not necessarily happening. It's not growing on trees within design systems. So having someone that's, been there, done that, a little bit more comfortable in their skin, has seen some shit, and is able to deal with it, I think is really valuable, especially at the leader level, at the more leadership level of ICs. Really important to have someone that's stable. Nothing never gets too high or too low. It has nothing to do with design. It's just sort of human experience of being able to deal with the day-to-day problems that come up with work. So that's one reason why I like folks with some gray hairs at that level, because it just creates a level of stability on the team.
Yeah, that
Sherry, what do
makes
you think?
sense.
I certainly have a lot of grey hair. It just gets covered up with hair dye. Um, I guess for me, the benefits of having more experienced people on the team, there's two sides of it. You've obviously got the technical stuff, but then also the people skills that come with experience. On the technical side, things like UX, good practice, and scalable patterns are something that takes years to develop a sense of. So, you need some leadership and direction from more experienced people on the team. On the people side, seeing the importance of links into product and the wider org, measurement, road mapping, and planning, these are all skills that develop with experience. I sort of feel like when you start off in a systems role, you're obviously, you're often drawn in by the sort of artifacts like the Figma library, the storybook of components, but then you learn over time most of the job is down to kind of stakeholder management, supporting consumers and reacting to feedback. And all these things are easier once you've got a bit of experience.
Yeah, so true. A lot of it is change management beyond those libraries and kits and stuff. So yeah, conversely, what do you feel are the benefits of having experience or less experienced professionals on a design system team?
I've worked with some incredible juniors and mids. I love having the opportunity to take a chance on someone enthusiastic and seeing them thrive. I am a cheerleader to many. Once I'm waving my pom poms for you, you'll never get rid of me. Juniors, I guess they bring creativity, fresh eyes, and a different way of thinking. I love being challenged, and my opinions are somewhat jaded from years of hard labor at the UX coalface. So it's nice to bring someone a bit fresher on board.
Yeah, very true. PJ, what do you think?
So the same reasons. So the reasons why senior folks are able to deal with the ups and downs is because they built up a ton of defense mechanisms, like skepticism and cynicism and all the isms. That's also a downside, right? Like if you're going into something with all, you've already made your decision. Oh, I've seen this a million times. It's going to play out like this, and then it don't. That's a problem. I think we were really lucky to, or the Gestalt team remains very lucky to have a person on the team where it's their first design role, and they bring a level of optimism and enthusiasm and energy that old geezers like me, it's really helpful to keep us on our toes and to keep us, like exploring and keeping our minds open. And so I don't think I would have a team full of juniors. I think that would be really rough. I think you need those seniors to help guide and level, like keep the valleys not too low and the mountains not too high. But I do think it's a good counterbalance of just a full senior team, if you will.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's a really good growth opportunity for both, right? So for more senior people to mentor new and rising designers, and a way for new and rising designers to learn a lot more, and also develop those like system thinking skills to think more broadly than just a product. Speaking of teams, I want to talk about design system teams. So overall, most companies have a design system team. So that's these um, blue bars. And so the darker blue is they have a design system team with full-time employees dedicated to it. And then the lighter blue is that they have design system team with partially resourced employees. They might work part-time on the design system, but they are part of the design system team. And then the orange is people who don't have a design system team at all. So we also took the results and broke it down based on company size, and found out like what that looks like when it comes to people having design system teams. So wanted to get your thoughts about, did anything surprise you when we broke down the the if how people have teams based on size? Um, Jerry, do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, it's kind of an interesting one. I mean, looking at these stats, you have like partially resourced efforts and small startups, which then sort of grows into more formalized systems when the company size gets bigger, which seems logical. The group between 10 and 49, where there's a big gap of systems, it's typically where everything goes Pete Tong, as we say. This is the time where you go from having like one designer and two engineers to, I don't know, having some Series A funding and getting this multitude join. And then if there's no established design system, the design jet mounts up. And, when you scale up further, you have to stop, regroup, and instigate some sort of system and process to ensure that product cohesion comes back together. So it's kind of interesting stats. We do sort of think in design systems that everyone has a design system, I guess, working within product and tech. But then, yeah, if you look outside of our industry and talk to someone like a firm of lawyers or insurance people, they don't even know what you're talking about. So I think we get really into this thing of everyone has a design system, but they really don't.
My
Yeah, for
mother-in-law
sure.
says I work on computers, and I said, "You're not wrong." Uh, like trying to explain design systems would it be? I haven't even tried. Um, yeah, I am trying to figure out how that 1,000+ team, that part of the 19%, how they're doing the work right now. That's got to be rough. Is all I can think. The thing that stood out is that there was just weird gaps. It was kind of rubber bandy. Like you got 67% of teams under 10 had a federated team, and then it goes back to like 63% didn't have any at all from 10 to 49. It's hard to read this. And the other thing is it doesn't seem to be any linear correlation between size and, I mean, at least there is some general trend towards a centralized team at the bigger it gets, which to me makes sense. But yeah, I couldn't see a pattern in here that immediately stood out and thought, oh, okay, this makes sense.
Yeah, and I think for sure, and a lot of the design system teams I like speak with, and their situations are so unique, and how design system teams have evolved have been so unique. So it can be super random. It could just be, oh, we don't have a design system team, so we kind of just when we can make components, right, and manage. And I think it really depends on, yeah, like where their company's at in terms of just general maturity, but a lot of factors. So um yeah, it is pretty wild. But I think it's good to see that like bigger companies definitely do have some semblance of a team, and we'll get to happiness later about what that means. But yeah, also wanted to look at um, design system uh, age and the size of the team. So overall, um, most people have 4 to 9 people on their team. It's very rare 3% have 20 or more people on their design system team. But we broke this down by age to see if there was any correlation with size based on how old your design system was. Um, so it looks like, when you're at 3 years old, you have more people on your team, 4 to 9 people, um, as like a big change versus having 1 to 3 people on your team. Um, so I guess based on your experience, both of you, in what situations would you want to expand or grow your team as your design system matures, and how might that look? Um, I guess PJ, if you wanted to,
Sure.
if you have thoughts.
I would grow slowly and carefully. Um, Part of the reason why we're in this mess right now is because the industry like turned on the blinders and started hiring like bonkers, and then had some hangover period where they said, well, why do we have all these people? So I don't believe in the continual growth because reasons. I think there needs to be a clear understanding of how much efficiency are you bringing to the company, and can we stay in the black in terms of the time saved versus the time invested, meaning how many hours the team is accounting for. So, and if anything, just stay a little under that uh, in terms of the ideal amount of people. So for that reason, design systems are all about stability. They're an institution within the company. So the last thing you want for an institution is to get a 50% layoff and then wait, what do we do? Like, how do we keep this institution afloat when you've lost half the people? So it's slow, considerate, sustainable growth, just enough for just what you need at that moment.
Nice. That sounds very sane. I feel like I've never worked on a where it was sane like that, but that makes a lot of sense. Jerry, what are your thoughts?
Oh, I just want to go and work on PJ's team. I don't think I've ever had such sensible advice before. I guess the most predictable time in a systems team is when you're building up from the foundations. You get into a good cadence with engineering of specing, building, and testing components. And the speed of turning this around is very much dependent on the number of hands on deck. When you sort of hit some maturity after this initial ramping up period, I guess I'd only really think about expanding the team if the remit was expanding. If we took on a new brand or a new platform or an additional product that needed a lot more hand holding and support. But as PJ says, you need to kind of level it off and find that stability once you reach some sort of maturity. I think the difficult thing is often teams sort of get to this point and then there's a change in management, or they lose their senior stakeholder, or something happens, and all the sort of good work that's been done is often for nothing. And I've been down this road a couple of times before.
Oh my gosh, yes. I'm like, you must have seen my experience. Yeah. I feel like we've all lived through a lot of trauma. We might have to start like a design system therapy group or something. Um,
I, one other thing to call out is that I think one area where I've seen design systems surge up is for some big initiative, like a redesign, or it seems like every company's redesigning right now. And so typically that's when the wallets open up. What do you need? We want to get this redesign out. What do you need for the team? That is a perfect opportunity to hire contractors. It's a short term. It's a window of work that's going to stop at some point. So don't hire full-time employees that are going to be lasting forever for a project that you're staffing up for a window of time. And I think that's part of the problem is we see all this work and then we immediately try to respond to it. And this is how many people we need. But I think another part of it is understanding, is this work permanent, or is it going to die down at some point, and surge accordingly. I mean, part of being a contractor is knowing that that contract is going to end some point. There's no misunderstanding. It's a very like upfront relationship. And so that's how I would, if we were to surge up, it would be hire talented contractors for a certain amount of time and then wind it down.
yeah, that's really great because I think then it sets that expectation that um this we have like the stability, but then we pull in people as we need versus all hands on deck, hiring a bunch of people and then like laying off a bunch of people to then give that perception of instability, or even just like the seriousness of your design system. um Very cool. Yeah. Very, very good thoughts. I'm feeling very enlightened right now. Uh, Wanted to talk about happiness. So we measured happiness based on how happy people were on their documentation or with their documentation. Um, and overall, people are pretty happy with their documentation, regardless of their documentation tool. So I guess the other thing is we took a look at happiness as influenced by the design system team type and the governance model. So for the team type, you know, for the most part, people were pretty happy. But the full time team was definitely the most happiest out of the team, or out of the different team types. But surprisingly, a lot of people without a design system team were pretty happy with their documentation. Um, so, wanted to see if either of you had any hot takes as to like why there's more happiness when yeah, when the there is no design team compared to when there is like a partially resourced team. Um, I don't know, Jerry, if you have a hot take on this.
Whew, a hot take. Firstly, can I just say happiness and documentation? This section is just the best bit of this report. I love documentation, so correlating trends around happiness just makes me happy. To circle back to your question, why there's more happiness when there isn't a design systems team compared with a federated team? I don't know. I mean, I've only worked on systems with a dedicated team, so I guess my answer is a bit of a punt. Maybe with no structure and ownership, it's more of a free for all. Could teams do what they want without the politics and constraints of a federated model? I'm not sure about this one. Have you got any hot takes on this, PJ?
The only thing I can think of is if it's federated, then you have an opportunity to make your own documentation. And who doesn't like making the rules, right? So if you, I think we've all been there to where you write documentation and people don't dig it. And then they don't necessarily, there isn't as clear of a bridge to update that, right? Now we have to have a meeting and talk through it. Whereas if it's federated and you just raise your hand and say, I'm going to update the guidance, that's a much more clear path. That's all I could think of, is that, if wielded clumsily, we are red tape and bureaucracy. And that's, it's just is what it is, right? As a product design team that you're trying to ship features, and now all of a sudden you got to talk to this team and they decide to write something in some documentation. Now I'm being asked to follow it. I can see how that can be rough. That's all I can think of off the top of my head.
Yeah. Speaking from someone who has created federated teams, and couldn't have a centralized team, like I feel like, we it was kind of like a band-aid solution. Like we could never get what we wanted to do done because we weren't fully dedicated to it. Um, and that made things a lot harder. So it was just like, oh, if we, you know, could have a centralized team and have full dedication, like we could get a lot more done. And I almost wonder if people who don't have a design system team are like, oh my gosh, we are doing great for what we have, which is nothing, right? So maybe it's just like, I don't know, the grass is greener, but yeah, for sure. And we're about like halfway through the webinar. So if people have questions, feel free to pop them in the channel. Um, Definitely happy to address them. And yeah, let's see, we do have a question. Oh, before I jump to that, so in terms of happiness, like since you both have led design system teams, like really curious to see, what ideas design managers or design system managers can do to increase happiness with their team.
By
Go on,
team, do you
PJ,
mean
you jump in
okay?
on the happiness.
Do you mean the design systems team or the entire design org with the
The
documentation?
I guess both, right? Maybe that's a good question. So yeah, let's start with design system team and making them happy,
Yeah.
and then broader.
I mean, you just like you got to be their biggest cheerleader. They got a tough job at baseline, right? And they're having to herd cats all the time, and it's when something succeeds, it's the product designer on the feature team that gets praised. When something breaks, it's the system designer that gets blamed. It's tough. And so a lot of it is just, I think, if you've done it, it's going to build a level of, hey, like I get it, like I understand. Just listening a lot and finding support mechanisms. So sorry, I'll keep this short. So a lot of this as your job, like of course you're supposed to listen and empathize, but like more concretely, how are you building structure and process or helping facilitate that within the team that absorbs some of that angst to where it's not just always a therapy session. It's like, I'm having the same conversation with a manager every single week. I just don't want to have this conversation anymore. How are you building structure and advocating to leadership to get them the support that they need? Ultimately, that's what's going to matter. You can listen all you want, but if you're not helping them not feel that way, then you're kind of not doing your job. In terms of happiness with the documentation, that one's easy. You just talk to friggin' designers and engineers, understand. The hard part is understanding, like executing on it, but I don't think there's one answer. It's just, hey, what's working about the documentation? Hey, what's not working about the documentation? And then, systematically taking those things on slowly but surely. Jerry, what do you think?
If you're ending on documentation, I guess I'll pick up on documentation. I think making sure your docs are written for the right audience helps with overall happiness. Design systems are consumed by lots of different types of consumers, and documentation can take lots of forms. An engineer might want a quick reference or setup guide. You might have a UX designer who wants to see the research and context and how components evolved, or I don't know, a new starter might want tutorials or onboarding guidance. I was talking about this with Amy Hupe on the podcast the other day. You often get this complaint that no one reads the docs or the docs are too verbose, but this is mainly down to the docs not being the right fit for the audience that they're serving. So I guess that's something we need to always keep in mind. Moving away from docs, I guess circling back around to overall team happiness. I guess with an established system, sort of once the hype has worn off, the feedback you get is often negative. People don't notice things until they don't work for them. And yeah, you kind of need to reframe negative feedback from personal criticism through to, people are engaged in using the system. And that takes a bit of mental rebalancing. Most of the job is interfacing with consumers, aligning to product roadmaps, planning, running office hours, supporting consumers, managing expectations. There's not a lot of design and design systems. The closest I get to design and design systems, I think, is just pointing to things in design review saying that they won't scale. So yeah, you certainly don't want to go into design systems sort of thinking it's a design job or a creative design job, because there's very little of that.
Yes, for sure. But I really like your point about making sure the documentation that you write is helpful to the people who are going to be consuming it. Because I think a lot of times we're so focused. As design system makers, we're so focused on all the little details, the scalability of things, usage guidelines, that we forget that like someone has to come in and actually like read the site, get information, not feel frustrated. Like it's still like you're designing a user experience in that aspect. So yeah, it's a great point. But um for sure. We have a couple questions from the audience. So, wanted to ask, Anton asks, employment or consulting, what are the advantages now and in the future if you are at the lead slash manager level with extensive practical experience?
Before we jump in with that one, I see in the chat that PJ's house fire.
Yeah, sorry, my fire alarm's going off. So I apologize. Yeah, it's happened a lot, as you can tell, Kat. This happens all the time. So house probably isn't on fire. It's fine. If I see flames, I'll go take care of it. I just apologize for the beeping in the background.
We actually don't hear it, so yeah, impressive
Willow,
noise cancellation.
Willow the dog just is so chill. She's obviously just like, yeah, fire alarm's going off again. We're all good with that. Okay, let's come back around to Anton's question. So, employment or consulting? So, should you go in-house or should you work as a consultant as you get more senior? It's a difficult one. I mean, I kind of fell into consulting just because I was offered a good consulting gig and it worked out well for me at the time. I mean, there's obviously pros and cons for both. As a consultant, you have to set up as a limited company, manage your own tax, do all your own accounts, that sort of thing, which is tough. In-house perm, they do all that for you. So I guess it's, the same with any role, regardless of whether you're in design systems or not. Um, for me personally, aside from the actual practical working day-to-day stuff, I don't know if there's a huge advantage in either. For me, it's really down to what's the role, who's the team. For me, the team fit is more important than anything else. And is it a good opportunity at the time? So yeah, I don't think I have a preference. How about you, PJ? I know you've done both, haven't you?
Yeah, I have. Yeah. So the great thing about consulting is you can fire your clients. We've all had those moments where, like, we've all had those moments, right? I think that's one thing. The other nice thing about consulting is you always you're like the new cool kid that comes to school, and everyone like gives you instant credibility. So you go in and you say something like, "Oh, that's so smart," and there's a guy or a lady on the other side of the room. It's like, "I said that same exact thing last week. No one took it seriously." So you get instant credibility as a consultant, which is super nice. I think the one, it's not a downside, it's just a different way of working, is that at some point that engagement is going to end, and there's going to be a limit to the amount of information that you're given compared to an employee that's there every single day. Uh, and so unless you have a consultant relationship where it's 4 or 5 years, there's going to be a cutoff as to how far you can go. So typically the thing that I would struggle with at times, if this was a really interesting problem or if I really was starting to have ownership over it, I knew that it was going to end at some point. Whereas theoretically, if I remain employed at a place, I can keep chugging away at the problem and know that, well, if I don't get it this week, I'll get it next week. And so there's pros and cons to both. And I think about, what do I want to do next, and consulting, there's a lot of reasons why that sounds pretty alluring.
Yeah, for sure. I actually, at the meetup that you and I met at PJ, I talked to somebody who was let go from their design system role and just started doing contract work. I asked him how it was going, and they were like, "Oh my gosh, it's amazing. Like I go in for like 3 months, 6 months, and focuses on building components, providing guidance, like just like the more tactical stuff. And like he didn't have to deal with like all like the change management, the politics, the navigating who to talk to, who to convince. So he can just go in, do his job, do it really well. So he was super happy. And then I, was how's like the amount of work you're getting? Like, are you like he was like, oh my gosh, like I have so much work, I'm turning work away. So I feel like there is some opportunity there. Which, if you wanted to switch things up, I think it is definitely an option. Like, you don't have to stay in a team just to participate with design systems. And if anything, being a contractor might get you more exposure to lots of different things. Um, for sure. Yeah. No, that's really cool. So we have another question from Vanessa. Um, how have you mentored new designers with how they filter feedback around a component so they can keep moving forward?
Trying to think around that one. Have you mentored new designers? How they filter feedback around a component? Okay, so how we'd all build a component together or give feedback? Is that what I'm looking at? I guess if I take it from that angle, for me, it's always about solving the problem. Who is the user? What's the problem we're solving for them, whether in design system or any bit of product design. I mean, if it's a component specific task that we're working on, then just sort of going through all of the different checkbox stuff and building a component. Have you thought through all the accessibility considerations? Have you thought through keyboard interaction and focus order and all the states and everything? So I guess I check through all of that. Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, we're solving problems for people. So I'd be looking at, are we solving that problem? I hope that's answered that. I'm not sure if I got the gist of the question right.
Yeah, Vanessa, let us know if you need to clarify that. We're totally happy to loop back. I don't know, PJ, if you have any thoughts.
It's funny because we were really lucky. Lila in the chat is a star in the making. And she was insistent about getting feedback. So she was very proactive about trying to get feedback from designers. She oftentimes had the opposite problem where she wasn't able to get feedback. And typically, what I would say in return is like, yo, like the train keeps on chugging. You do your best you can. This is the information you got. We got your back. Like you did everything you could. Now it's time to ship it and learn from it. And you know what? You may get feedback afterwards. Like, why did you do that? Well, you did your best to get the feedback. We still got to ship software. We'll make it better down the road. So I think some of this is also just the anxiety of if I'm not getting feedback, what do I do? And I think you do the best you can with the information you have, and then you adjust as necessary. But that can be just as uncomfortable. Too much feedback or too little feedback. You're always looking for the right amount of feedback.
Yeah, for sure. I think like I've seen in situations where too many people, because it's say it's like your good old trusty button component that every product uses. And if you're supporting a product portfolio of like 20 products, everyone feels that they have to chime in with feedback about how the button should look in their product, right? So I think that can get overwhelming. And I think it's, setting expectations of like what the intent of the design system is, the direction and strategy. Like we're all moving toward one unified design system. We're all, going to have to give and take a little bit here and there. But also, understanding if the feedback is someone's like opinion, right? Like I don't like that green because I hate green as the as the color, right? So and yeah, Vanessa says that is part of the problem with enterprise design systems. Yes, like lots of incoming thoughts and opinions. So I think that's the thing is like maybe foundationally setting some expectations, like the strategy we're moving forward, toward a unified design system. We're all going to have to make some compromises. I think people can be understanding when it comes to that. And then, yeah, if people have opinions, kind of suss out if that's an opinion versus like something grounded in a basis. Like, okay, I don't like this green because it's not accessible. Totally fair. I think the other thing is, not just looking at components for individual components, but looking at things holistically. That might help with some feedback as well, like navigating. Okay, I understand that you have this concern about the button, but when we look at things holistically, it needs to be like this, that type of thing. So hopefully that helps. But yeah, I think um I think we all share that trauma. We should definitely start this support group, which is also someone mentioned a design system therapy is really just called a design system team. um but
I
yeah, all
love
right.
that. Oh, God. Oh,
um
if there's one thing I take away from this, it's going to be that the design systems therapy team.
yeah.
Peter's got his therapy dog in the background. Maybe Willow could participate.
Yes, yeah, for sure.
Should
So
adopt that.
Russell asks, we can all agree that design systems are never finished. Could you verbally describe a realistic level of anxiety or discomfort to help further support this notion?
By what by anxiety or discomfort? What do you mean by that? Does it make you uncomfortable that design systems aren't finished? Is that the I'm trying to understand it. Yeah, okay. Man, ain't nothing ever finished. I understand it is uncomfortable, right? But like, products are never finished. Like you're never done learning. You're never done like it that is the thing that's tough about life is it just keeps moving forward and you're never really done with anything. Um, so I don't know if that helps, but I think that's the one thing that I've just come to terms with is that there's nice milestones and we should celebrate those milestones, but then once that's over, then it's the next thing. One thing you could just think of though is when do you want to get off the train? Like you hit the train stop and it's time to try something new. So that might be another way. Like just because that keeps moving forward doesn't mean you need to continue forward with that, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I totally agree. Design systems aren't for everyone forever. And, some of the most successful product designers I've had go into product teams from the design system. They've done a stint in the system, then gone to work in a product team. And they've been a fantastic advocate for the system. They've got a good understanding of scale because they've worked within the system. So, yeah, as you say, if it's time to get off the design systems train, I'm just about to start a pure accessibility role. So for me, this will be my first non-design systems and non-design role ever, I think. So, these things do come along and, your interests change and evolve. And I guess the more senior I get, the more I realize the less I know and the more that there is to know. It is just a constant learning experience. But I kind of think that's exciting. I mean, I've built so many design systems and they've all been slightly different, all because of, the different stakeholders and the different environments and the different products. So there's always something to learn. You just got to kind of get over that discomfort bit, I guess.
Yeah. And I think, maybe if you're like you've tried something, so say you're trying to build the component library in your design tool and in code and you aimed for 3 months and it's been 4 months and you're just like still not there, like that's like an unhealthy level of anxiety. But I think that's also where you start the conversation, or even before then, to say, hey, like we're not going to achieve this goal. I need more help. I need more support, and vocalizing that to kind of start mitigating things. So I think that's something that, you can also consider as well. We definitely
One,
have yeah, go ahead.
sorry, just one other thing to try to put a positive spin on this is uh, you never really failed, right? Because it's never over. So if that didn't work, you got the next iteration, and so there hopefully there's a way to spin this in a way to where, because it's never done, you've never completely failed. You may have stopped on it, but you always got a chance to make it better. You always got a chance to improve from the last iteration.
Yeah, I love that. It's a really, really good take. Um, okay, we have a couple more questions, and let's see. Thisbe, I think, if hopefully I'm pronouncing that right. If you can give one advice for a designer that is starting to work establishing a design system for the first time, what would it be?
Oh, that's a tough one. One bit of advice: establishing a design system. Oh, go on, PJ. You answer that while I think about it. There's
I was
just
gonna
so
say
many
not it.
things going on in my head.
Okay, so be patient. It's gonna take a long time. These things take a really, really long time. I remember having a conversation at a prior company when I was talking on the scale of years to get this, and like, what do we get next year? What do we get this quarter? And I mean, you got to give them something, but I was like, whoa, okay, well, we gotta like set expectations here that this takes a long time, and we have to be in it for the long ride. So I think, this is hard. Take it easy on yourself, and also ex- be in it for the long haul. Make decisions for the long haul, not for like now, 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 now. Hopefully that'll set expectations for yourself and for leadership, that um, of when to expect to see progress.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
think the
that's
difficulty, you see a lot of teams really overpromise and then underdeliver because there's so much expectation on a new design system team, and you're kind of, there's the analogy of, you're building the track and the train's running on the track at the same time, or flying the plane and building the plane, that sort of thing. So yeah, managing expectations, I guess that's the most difficult thing, and realizing you can't solve all the problems on the first day. For me, I always look to what are the objectives within the product and tech team, or what are the objectives within the wider organization, and how can the design system work to support those if we need to prioritize. Also, close links into product, and just make sure you're sort of prioritizing the right stuff initially. It's very easy just to steam in with a kind of cookie cutter approach after reading a book or a load of blogs, but your own organization will be very different. So yeah, you need to do a lot of discovery, talk to a lot of people, get the lie of the land, and yeah, just try and manage expectations. That's the difficult bit.
yeah, yeah, I totally agree. I think I've naively gone, "Oh, we can make a UI kit in 2 weeks, a week." And then you do that and you're like, "Okay, no, that was not." And so I think that's the thing, is like what PJ said, going slow, taking your time, understanding the expectations, level setting those expectations, but also what Jerry said, like, communicating and speaking with people is super helpful, right? Because I think it's not just about like starting on your own, or starting, like, just having that communication goes a long way. So yeah, you cannot make a UI kit for a design system in 2 weeks. That's not a thing. Um, great. Okay, one last question. I don't know where Jerry disappeared to. Um, but Ren asks, do you anticipate that design system designers will increasingly require enhanced business acumen and potentially necessitate proficiency in business analysis to become highly impactful contributors?
I think every designer should, and design systems especially. But the joke I say is that you're not getting hired as a designer. You're not getting hired to design. You're getting hired to make the company money, and you're just happening to do that within the design role. But ultimately, if they're giving you $1, they want $2 back. So I think um, understanding business priorities, your role within the business, how to move business priorities forward, especially within design systems, because there still is, a questioning why would we invest in this thing that isn't directly working on the thing. Um, I don't think it hurts to understand business, considering we all work for businesses.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's almost kind of where having more senior people on the team can really help. So they can help navigate that, but also mentor others and seeing, how to navigate that. Um, I think the other thing is like at Clarity conference last November, Erica Hall, who wrote a book called Just Enough Research, she did a talk about basically like the business is like a grid. And essentially, you don't need an MBA per se, like a business degree, to be able to work with stakeholders at a high level. But she really emphasized just talking to them as humans, like seeing what their pain points were, because they have goals that they have to be accountable for. And then, knowing how to align your work or your team's work to those goals can really help get the buy-in you need. So you don't need to have like an MBA per se, but like definitely know how and being comfortable, speaking with stakeholders, and just realize that they are humans too. They probably put their pants on one leg at a time, possibly. Um, so, so yeah, I think consider that it's really just talking and getting to know them. All right, so I guess Fra asks, to secure broader stakeholder buy-in, how do you calculate quant benefits or quantitative benefits?
Man, we measure so much. The Gestalt team measured so much. We had estimates for how much time Gestalt saved design and engineering through interviews. We had measurement of adoption within design and engineering. We had bi-yearly surveys, which went into all sorts of topics of efficiency and productivity and overall happiness. There were broader company Thank God there were broader company surveys, which reinforced what we were learning because, of course, the design systems team has a survey that said that they're really valuable, right? Like it's very easy to be biased there. So a lot of this was trying to quantify. I think the one bit of advice that I would have there is don't shy away from fuzzy math, acknowledge it, but don't shy away from it. I think a lot of folks say, well, it's really hard to measure this. I don't think it can be completely accurate, so I'm not going to measure anything. I would say, like, even if it's fuzzy, it's still helpful to be able to say, hey, we did our best to measure it. This is how we measured efficiency. Do with it what you will, but at least we have some idea of potential business value uh, that we're providing to the company.
Yeah, welcome back, Jerry. We were about to send Willow to look for you.
I don't know what's happened here, but my internet has completely dropped out. So I'm tethered off my phone.
Oh
So
my
living
gosh.
very dangerously. Let's see what happens.
Yeah. Um, all right. Okay. Wanted to wrap up because we had a couple minutes. Really quickly, wanted to get your final thoughts on design system careers. So, as the both of you have evolved your careers and worked in design systems, and supported the growth of design system team members, what's your take on pursuing a career path in design systems? What advice do you have for someone who's on the fence about focusing on design systems? Jerry, I'll give it to you. Hopefully
Sure.
we stay connected.
What I hope so. As I said before, I guess the design and design systems is very misleading. Systems require a lot of sort of technical setup. It's quite nerdy. You've got to be very excited about the idea of like mapping a tokens architecture and endlessly picking through the minutiae of tech specs. You then obviously got the people side of it. You do a lot of stakeholder management and running office hours and supporting people, that sort of thing. There's not a huge amount of design in it, so you've got to look at it kind of more holistically as a job, as opposed to going into it because it's a design role. It's certainly not a creative design role. So from that perspective, yeah, I guess you need to be slightly wary. On the flip side of it, I don't know. I've just found such a great community of supportive people within the design system sphere. Everyone is incredibly open and very sharing. And I've done so many sort of meetups and things where I've touched base with another team and just said, hey, can both our teams pile in and just do a share of what we're working on, that sort of thing. People are just so open to it, and they're also just hugely open to kind of helping you out and supporting you. I have calls with people all the time where I'm completely taking up their time, but maybe they've done something that I need to do, and they're willing to share their time, and you of course pay that back. So yeah, that side of it, the community side is really great. Have you found that, PJ, within systems?
Yeah, the community is great. That's definitely a major highlight. I think a lot of folks that are just really interested in doing, um, and making and solving problems. So definitely folks that I love. I think one reason why that is the case is because systems are a service job, and it's pretty selfless, right? Like, you are there to prop other people up. You are there to deflect praise and absorb blame. That is your role. On the benefit of that is you get to work on problems that are, there's no bounds to them. They just go on forever, and they're super absorbing in a good way. They're super challenging. So if you like solving problems and getting into really tough challenges, and you don't really care about, getting the credit or the trophy at the end of that, this is a perfect job for you, because it really is, um, a limitless space to solve really interesting problems.
I love it. Yeah. Thank you so much on that note. It was, yeah, I feel very enlightened. It was really great speaking with you both. I hope we get to hang out in real life in person sometime all together. I also have a meetup in the Bay Area called Hello Design Systems, which is how I met PJ. We will meet in person soon. I wanted to make sure everyone was over whatever colds they had. But thank you so much, everyone. We will be back again in a couple of weeks with another webinar. Thank you so much, PJ and Jerry, for sharing your thoughts and knowledge and experience with us. We all learned quite a bit today. So thank you so much.